street appeal is the most important part because
It is.
that's the cover of the book. And people do judge the book by its cover. Your investment property is really a business. Each investment property is a business, and you've got to treat it that way.
The owners have bills that need to be paid. They own an investment property. It's not a charity.
I recently had a property in Adelaide, and we went for the higher rent. And someone came in on the first day and paid 12 months in advance.
High quality property management. This is a very big one. Obviously, coming from a property manager, I'm going to preach this.
So I'll always say, get a professional, pay the money, because if you're the property manager, you need 10,000 hours to become good.
I've had an owner in the past who came to me after he had put tenants in the house and he didn't effectively screen them, and he ended up $20,000 in repairs.
I think when you invest in property, you want a passive investment and you want to hire all the specialists to do everything for you and you do nothing.
And it is the most stressless situation that they can ever have, because obviously being an investor, it can be quite stressful at times.
I feel like you call him and say, look, buddy, you realize you're going to be living in your car. I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but... Okay, guys, me and my team are about to go live. So make sure you grab your beverage of choice, sit down, and you're in for an amazing show. Hello, and welcome to the show. And I've got Laura here with me. Hi, Laura, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Hi, everyone.
Yes, exciting show tonight. We're going to be talking about the 7 things that you can do when it comes to property investing. I have got the thing here. What is it called? What is it?
We've got 7 tips to get top rent for your rental investment properties.
There you go. So, Laura, I'm glad someone here knows what they're doing, which is great. Thank you, which is great. Now, before we start, what I want to do is I've just come to Bali, and I'm in just moved from Uluwatu to Canggu, and previously had lunch with one of the top Ukrainian developers here in Bali, because they're building a lot of stuff here. There's lots happening in Bali, heaps, and he was like saying to me, he's like, George, I hear people in Australia sleeping in their cars. He goes, but your country is so big. It's bigger than Europe. Why? What's the problem there? So everyone around the world has heard about our big challenges with people finding somewhere to live and, getting a rental property. And what I've heard now is, the average rental in Australia, you need $100,000 to afford it. Not only that, I mean, if you look at CoreLogic, of March housing results, right? That rents have increased by, in March, they've increased by 1.2%, right? So if you look at that, over the last 5 years, rents have gone up 38.4%. That is staggering when you think about it, because, before the 5 years previous, they only went up 15.4%. So more than double. So yeah, so there you go. I thought I'd talk about that. So Lara, you're in property management.
I am, yes.
And you're very good at what you do.
Yes.
Which is great. So let's talk about the 7 tips how to get the most out of your rental property. What's number 1?
Wonderful. I did have a presentation. Is Kimberly able to pull that one up?
Even better. I love this. This is great.
Do you want me to drive, Lara, or do you want to drive?
Let me see if I'm able to. If you can, that would be great. Next. Thank you. Perfect. So yes, today we're going to discuss 7 top tips on how to get top rent on your property as an investor, obviously. So we'll go through these in more detail. The first one is going to be property presentation. So how you present your property to the market, because this is the first thing that people see on an online advertisement. So presenting that very well obviously gives people their first indication of potentially what the experience is going to be like, or the property condition itself. The second one is going to be marketing strategy. We'll then jump into our third tip, which is setting a competitive rental price. So obviously this will be in more depth about looking into the current surrounding market of your suburb and surrounding suburbs, similar property attributes and everything like that, and figuring out how you set that competitive rental price to ensure that you're keeping on par with the competitive rental market that, as George said, we are currently experiencing and seeing all across Australia. So 4 is obvious if we need to, and a good tip would be to offer a desirable feature for potential applicants. So something that Australians and or in Queensland and across Australia, look for. 5 is high quality property management. So having that high quality property manager can really help you in securing really good tenants. 6 is showcasing your property's features. So what are the best things about your property as to why someone would want to rent it? And 7 is leveraging seasonal demands as best as you possibly can. Perfect. So property presentation. So this is all about, just like I said, being well presented and making sure that your home is clean. There's no outstanding visual maintenance and defects issues that tenants can see when they inspect your property that may make them feel like it's not ready for them to move into and delay that inquiry coming through to an application for you. So obviously that we don't want to have that happen. So making sure that those inquiry leads can turn into applications and give you the most applications out there so that you actually get to pick which applicant you like or you think is more suitable for your property.
Absolutely.
So,
and I'd say, if we go back to property presentation, I would say that what you're saying about that makes a lot of sense. But not only that, if your property is really clean and tidy with no defects, your tenants will actually maintain it better as well because of the graffiti effect. See, what they find is if someone does graffiti somewhere and you don't get rid of it, then more people do graffiti and it gets worse and worse. And the key to stopping graffiti is get rid of it as soon as you see it. And having a rental property is the same thing. If you allow it to go downhill and have defects, then you're going to get poor quality tenants, but also they're not going to look after it the same.
Yes, it also makes them have the same attitude as, oh, well, the owners let it be like that, so why do we have to care as much? And that's a big thing as well when it comes to making sure at open home inspections when we're showing people through is the biggest thing people forget about is their lawns and gardens. And making sure that they are well maintained, because that is one big aspect that sort of sets your house out from the neighborhood or makes it fit in with the neighborhood and the surrounding properties on the street to give that street appeal is the biggest. A lot of people do drive past properties before they even attend an open home just to see what it looks like, what the neighborhood's like, if they've got kids, if that's going to suit. So making sure that we can try and, present your property as best as possible at all times is a big thing, because that's the first impression they will ever see of your property.
Lara, street appeal is the most important part because
It is.
that's the cover of the book, and people do judge the book by its cover. And
Yes.
even when selling your home, the most important part you can fix is the street, because when people drive down there, if that looks terrible, they're not going to look inside.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah. You're exactly right. So, and obviously I know the second point to here is potentially staging. So if you've bought a new property or you've recently built one, there's some things you can do to sort of bring the cost down in terms of staging. There is virtual staging nowadays, which is a great tool. They use it quite a lot in property sales, not so much in rentals. However, staging a rental property virtually or even physically, depending on costs and availability and everything, is a very good tool because it allows you to stage a property and put furniture in there virtually as such, but it also allows people when they're viewing your property to imagine their life in there with their furniture replaced and how big the rooms and the house is in itself based on, the furniture that you've virtually placed in that house. And it gives them a really good feel of they could make that their home.
Yeah, Lara, I love that. But let's say you bought a brand new property, and we don't want to spend all the money of getting furniture and things like that, but we still want to add some touches that are easy to do. Is there an easy way of doing this just to make it feel a bit more homely, less sterile?
The virtual staging I would, because it is a much cheaper option. You don't have to actually put furniture in the house. You get a professional photographer to come out, do your photos, and they can virtually stage it and literally put virtual furniture in the property, which can help bring that appeal.
Anything physical you can put in your property without actually moving all the furniture in?
I wouldn't say too much, no. I would probably encourage people to lean more towards the virtual staging with that, just because it's a lot easier to do. And obviously you get professional photos done most of the time anyway. So having that done right off the bat, it means you can also use those virtually staged professional photos down the track when you're looking to secure your second or third tenant, depending on obviously tenancy periods and things like that.
Oh, that's a great idea. So you do it once and you can just use it over
Yeah.
and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you might even use it if you want to sell it one day too.
Yes, exactly right, because you've already spent that money and had that done professionally and the right way, and you can use those for multiple occasions for whatever you may need to use them for.
So it's a great investment because you can use it over and over, and you're
Yes.
getting the property. You buy a brand new property, it's the best time to get the photos because it's going to be the best it's ever going to be.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can probably get a tax deduction to do it.
Yes, you can. It will be a tax deduction based on your rental income because it's something you have spent on an investment property.
Excellent. Nice. Thank you, Lara. That's good.
Perfect. All right. So marketing strategy is something we'll jump into now. So again, we've touched on this in the previous slide, but professional photography, it does make a very big difference as we've been discussing so far. As George has said, that's people's first impression of your home when they see it, and people do judge the book by its cover. So having those professional photos and not just, iPhone quality photos online, it makes all the difference because they can really take the photos from the best angles to showcase your home as it is and the features that it does have as well. And as it says on the slide is, capturing the best aspects of your property and highlight its greatest features. So professional photos, and again, you can use them ongoing throughout the entire period you own them and potentially sell it as well. They are absolutely amazing and highly suggested to have professional photos done first time round and just continue to use them. And second point for marketing structure would be I suggest all of my owners to start at a higher price. So this will also touch on looking into setting that price and looking into the surrounding market and what the prices are doing. I always suggest my owners to go a little bit on the higher end of what the market's doing, just because, as I've stated in my slide as well, there's no harm in advertising higher. So because what it will do is if we can secure a tenant at that high price, I have a very happy owner who is absolutely stoked at the price we've achieved. If we can't, we are able to have a price in the middle where my owner and my client's happy, and we can still secure a really good tenancy for them, and they're not left right at the low end of the market where they're potentially barely making ends meet with their investment property with the expenses that comes with that, because that is not what you want when you're purchasing your first or multiple investment properties. Is you're having investment property to make money on, not just to try and make ends meet to keep.
Absolutely. I mean, your investment property is really a business. Each investment property is a business, and you've got to treat it that way.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny because sometimes we get people joining our program and they've got a property and they've had it for 10 years and they've got the same tenant and the rent hasn't gone up for 10 years. And they're like, oh, he's such a good tenant. He always pays on time. And I'm like, he's not a good tenant because he's not paying market rent.
Yep.
Right? Because a good tenant is not only someone that pays on time and looks after your property, but it's someone that also pays market rent. If they're not paying market rent, they're not really a great tenant, unfortunately. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, sometimes, some people get emotional about things and, do the emotional part, but it is a business.
It is, yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing that I take up on when I do lease renewals, most definitely, especially when you have tenants that are trying to negotiate and say, oh, but we're really good tenants. And yes, I understand that. But at the end of the day, the owners have bills that need to be paid. They own an investment property. It's not a charity, unfortunately. And we just negotiate in between to keep all parties happy. And if that owner is very happy with that tenant, we may, again, we do the same thing when it comes to lease renewals, is looking at what the market's doing. We may just go in the middle. We may not try to go higher. We may just go in the middle and offer them the middle section of that market rent. So we keep the tenants happy because it's not the highest, it's not the lowest, and the owners are still happy because they are getting market rent with really good tenants they've continued to secure for potentially multiple years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having loyalty is good. It's great.
Yes.
And you look like you're a very good negotiator. Are you good at negotiating?
Yeah. Yes. I always regularly have my negotiator pants on and negotiating between parties. But it's good because we always get a good outcome, and the tenants understand that they can't just always get their own way by potentially, having that emotional aspect to it. Is they also have to realize if they owned a home, they would be paying a mortgage too, and they can't negotiate when it comes to that, to the sense they try with us.
Excellent.
Perfect. Okay, so setting a competitive rental market price. So researching market trends. So if you have a good property manager, we do this for you. We also do like it when our owners do their own research and come back to us with questions and concerns, because we know that you guys are getting educated about it, you're engaged in it, and it opens up that discussion of, oh, can we try this higher price, Lara? Yeah, of course we can. Why not? Or maybe not that high, but a little bit lower. So it opens up the ability for you guys as owners to understand that we are giving you the correct market price when we're, advising you what price we should list at or renew at. And you have that ability to go and check that yourself on websites such as realestate.com or Domain, and even RP data as well, to get those market monthly recaps and see how it's changed and what's going on, which really helps sort of everyone agree on that price to set to. Awesome. So offering desirable features. So one big thing I have seen over the years, especially obviously I'm based in Queensland, but in Queensland is pet-friendly options. A lot of tenants across Australia have pets. So if your property can accommodate pets, advertise it as pet-friendly. It can open up a larger pool of tenants. You then have less people inquiring before applying, going, hey, can I have pets there? Or not applying because they think they can't. So if you can accommodate pets, it is one of the best things you can do to post that on the ad to say it is a pet-friendly complex or it's a pet-friendly property, because it does open up that larger pool of tenants that are looking for houses.
Yep. Now, as I understand it, after COVID, there was a change to law when it comes to pets.
Yes, there was. In Queensland, yes.
Yep. So I think you have to accept pets in Queensland, don't you, now?
Technically, yes. There are certain reasons that you can decline based on pets, but it is very, very restricted as to what those are. A few of them off the top of my head is if the owner is going to occupy the residence at any stage and has an allergy to pets, if there's inadequate fencing, if there are body corporate bylaws that stipulate the complex is no pets at all, or that the pets have to be a certain weight range, that's when obviously you can decline the pet because they don't meet those legislation rules that we can't control.
Yeah, I was wondering about the strata because a lot of stratas don't allow pets. So I was wondering how
Yes.
that law is going to affect the rental. But obviously, strata laws, you can't circumvent them just because of the rental laws. Is that right?
Yeah, so the strata laws sort of override the RTA and legislation Form 18A general tenancy laws. However, with strata, that if they do have pets and it's a weight range, there typically is sort of a leeway percentage that they will allow. So for example, one of my complexes at the moment is 10 kilos for pets, but they do have a leeway period. So a 12 to 15 case-by-case application to them could be approved.
I'm just curious. I mean, if you had a unit, it'd be really silly to have a Rottweiler inside a unit.
Yes.
So can you specify a certain weight or a certain size property, or how does that work?
I suppose that would depend. If you're saying a unit where there's no strata or body corporate, I suppose that would depend, because obviously you don't want to put a Rottweiler into a unit because that's not fair on the pet,
No.
let alone anything else, because they're in units and they typically don't have that backyard space for the dog to be able, or any sort of pet to be able to run around in a backyard with grass.
Yep. Yeah. So I suppose because people can come in and rent a property and then a week later bring a pet in, right? Yes.
Yeah, yes and no. So they can apply to get a pet application. So in Queensland, if they don't get a response in 14 days, it's automatically approved.
Yep.
And if that's when it comes into play, what the legislation has now changed in regards to pet as to why you can or can't decline them. So one of them can be obviously if they have too many pets under that city council and they need a permit for it, we can decline that and say, no, look, unfortunately, you're over that pet limit, or the property isn't suitable in terms of size, or there's inadequate fencing. The owner wants to
Lara,
occupy it.
so if we had a crazy cat lady with 30 cats, you can say no, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
most definitely you can, because that
Yep.
goes against the council regulations for pets as well.
Because I'm almost thinking it's better to be upfront and be pet friendly. Better the better devil you know. So then you know what pet they've got instead of them coming in and then bringing a pet in. Because then
Yes.
you can pre-frame things, and if someone's got a big dog, you can sort of say it's not because of the pet, but you just don't get them don't give them the thing. 'Cause
Yeah.
you can't say no because of a pet, but obviously you
Yes.
could be discriminate with who you let in.
Yes, yeah. So it's very, it can be very tricky and a fine line to walk for property managers in terms of pets and applications. And basically, what we do is if we do have applications with pets or owners that say, look, I really prefer not to have a pet, or I really prefer to have an outdoor only dog or just cats, is we will present them with multiple applications. And then if an applicant that gets declined that has a pet that's outside of what the owner was happy with, is we just say, look, unfortunately, we provided the owner with multiple applicants and they chose someone else that they preferred. That way, it doesn't leave us on the end of going through any
Litigation
complaint with
or
RTA.
something.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
Excellent. Thanks for explaining that. I appreciate that.
That's okay. And then the last one I've got on that slide. Oh,
Yep. Go back. We're finished.
Perfect. Is just incentives. So you could, if we're in a market that's quite slow, and we have seen it happen, and again that will touch on looking at the periods of when to try and lease your property. Obviously, that depends on so many things and can sometimes be out of your control. But in this aspect, it could be offering a week's free rent to entice renters. So if we're having a slow market or we're not seeing great applicants come through, it could be putting up a week's free rent. It could also be in a competitive market where we're really trying to find that one good tenant that is going to be potentially long-term, if that's what the owner's after, is offering an incentive like that to them. And I have had an owner do that in the past. They actually offered the 3 of their tenants for their investment properties a week's free rent at Christmas.
Yep, I think it's a great idea. In this sort of market, you probably don't need it because it's very tight. But I remember when we were doing properties, probably back in 2010, you needed to do that to really get the rental first, because I'd much rather give 1 week away and get my full rental price than reduce my rent and then wait. Because if you wait a couple of extra weeks, your price has been reduced anyway because of the amount it is. So you really want to get that tenant in quick. And I like what you say, 4 to 7 days, you put in the higher price, with caveats, of course, because, if you've got 20 properties hitting the market at the same time, you probably want to be a bit more competitive. But if you're the only one at that time, then you can put your price up higher and try to fish for a higher amount. Funny enough, I recently had a property in Adelaide and we went for the higher rent, and someone came in on the first day and paid 12 months in advance with the higher rent.
Yeah.
I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah. And again, it just goes to show, obviously, and that comes into play of what the market's doing at the moment, and how much is out there, if it's competitive, if it's not, and how quickly that can happen. And there's a lot of situations like yours, George, that where owners have had that happen as well. It may not be 1 day, it may be 3, but they've experienced similar things like that, which is amazing because they feel so grateful that we've achieved that really high price that they may have thought in the back of their head, no, she's crazy, we're not going to get that price for it. And we do.
Yep. Excellent.
Perfect. So high quality property management. This is a very big one. Obviously, coming from a property manager, I'm going to preach this. But we do really help when it comes to finding you a tenant. So one of the big things is tenant screening. So we're finding quality tenants. And again, this touches on the way your home is presented as well. And we want to make sure that they're going to care for your home as if it was technically their own, because that means there's less damage, less maintenance, less wear and tear, because they really do care for it and treat it as if it was their own home, and have that, the pride in living where they live and treating it as their own home. So effective tenant screening, it can help avoid long-term damage and ensure your rental income is secure as well. So screening them to make sure that they haven't been blacklisted on databases such as Ticker, which is used in Australia and New Zealand, just really helps to make sure that we are checking that they have never defaulted through another agency or with a private landlord as well. And then they don't owe money to anyone. They haven't been through court. They haven't got bankruptcy records, anything like that. It really helps. We have the access to be able to do that, to make sure we're doing all those checks to really eliminate any rent arrears issues and any sort of damage happening to your property by having a tenant in there.
When it comes to screening tenants and managing a property,
Yes.
it's very important to have someone that's got experience.
Yes.
Because I've seen people rent their own property out, and invariably they totally stuff it up, and they're trying to save a percentage, but they're actually cost themselves a lot more money. I haven't seen anyone that has actually maximized their rental and made more money by doing it themselves. You always make more money having a professional doing it for you. But it's also, when you screen tenants, you know if they're bullshitting because you screen them every day, every year. Where if you've got a couple of properties, you don't have the experience to know who's good and who's bad. So I'll always say, get a professional, pay the money, because if you're the property manager, you need 10,000 hours to become good. And those 10,000 hours, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. It's going to cost you a lot of money. And having the wrong tenant is a nightmare and can be very bad. And they're hard to get rid of, the tenancy laws in Australia. So you want to get it right at the beginning. And if you have to get rid of them, you want someone that knows what they're doing and knows all the legals, because you get one day wrong and you're stuck.
That's exactly right. And obviously I've had an owner in the past who came to me after he had put tenants in the house, and he didn't effectively screen them, and he ended up $20,000 in repairs.
Yep.
And he decided to then sell because he was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too difficult. He ended up renovating it and sold it because he's like, it's too difficult. He just didn't want to be an investor anymore. And that was, again, a situation there where he had tried to do it himself to save himself management fees and the other fees that come into play with having a property manager. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure if a lot of people don't realize that the fees they pay us are all tax deductible against their income anyway. So it really is. Yeah, it really is in their best interest to get a professional to do the hard work for them.
Yeah. I think when you invest in property, you want a passive investment and you want to hire all the specialists to do everything for you and you do nothing. That's the best way to make money, because if you're busy becoming a property manager, you're not really an investor. You're just getting yourself a part-time job that you're not good at.
Yes. And that's exactly, I suppose, the best thing. And one of the biggest things I've taken on board as being a property manager is taking that stress away from my owners and new incoming owners that come across to me as well, so that they can sit back and relax and just get the emails and the updates from me, and that's it. They get their money paid into their account. They don't have to worry about anything. They don't have to stress. It is all under control and handled, and it is the most stressless situation that they can ever have, because obviously being an investor, it can be quite stressful at times. So having that quality property manager behind you, backing you, really does help in those or any situation, really, as it most likely is one of your biggest investments that you've purchased as well. And then obviously responsive communication. So a reliable property manager is very responsive. So you want to make sure that your property manager is responsive to your potential tenants, which includes inquiries and applications, to keep the rental process smooth and as quick as possible, really, to just get that all finalized and done with. So you know at the end of the day, you've got a secured tenant very quickly, but they've done that whole process really well, and you're satisfied with the tenants that you've approved, and you have that great experience going through, because there's nothing worse than having your property sit on the market for weeks and weeks and weeks, to find out that you move it to another agency potentially and they rent it within the first 7 days, and it turns out that you've just sat there and not had rental income coming in because your property manager wasn't responsive to those inquiries, and they weren't holding the open homes and getting people through and really, going through those applications as quickly as they can to get them through to you and process them. Awesome. So showcase your property's features. We have touched on this before. So appeal to the Queensland lifestyle or Australian lifestyle, depending where you guys are based, by showcasing the outdoor living. That is a big thing for Australia as well. is really showcasing that outdoor living, no matter if it's a townhouse and it's quite small or you're in a unit. It can even be that community feel as well. A lot of people are super, invested in trying to find a suburb or a house or a complex that has that community feeling where their kids can hang out with the neighbors' kids and play outside, and everyone just gets along really well and has that community spirit about them. I know a lot of you guys will have new properties, but ensuring or upgrade your property's outdoor areas such as balcony courtyards and highlight these in the online listing. So if they do become a little bit outdated or worn or worse for wear, is just making sure that you're either returfing or landscaping and just making sure those areas are appealing to look at and be outside with, just to make those things really appealing to those tenants that are, a lot of people look for that outdoor living and being able to entertain or have their friends outside in that outdoor space and just really enjoy outside and the fresh air and the nice outdoor living experience. And then the final one will just be adding value. So with low cost landscaping and easy management. So potential tenants, they don't want to spend hours and hours on lawn care. They really don't. That's the last thing they want to do. So making sure that anything, and obviously as in new builds we're seeing quite often, it's very low maintenance, low cost, and just easy to manage. And that is a really good thing because it allows them to have that space but really easily maintain it. And it also allows or ensures for the owners that they're not going to have really overgrown poor areas when it comes to sort of, their outside landscaping or outdoor living areas as well. All right, perfect. So leverage seasonal demand as well. So timing is key. I understand, obviously, sometimes this is completely out of your control, but it is a good thing if you can try and make it fall into periods where it's going to be less competitive to help you get that higher price as well. So rental demands fluctuate seasonally in Queensland as well as all the other states in Australia. So the busiest time for tenants finding a new home is prior to school term starting. So it could be any school term, typically around summer, as well as people are wanting to relocate. It is usually the easiest time to move. They can get settled in before school starts back for the new year as well. So after the post-Christmas period is one of the best times to try and put your property on the market to secure those tenants. And again, the slowest time is Christmas, as a lot of people they're on holidays. They're not interested in moving. That's the last thing they want to think about. And same as obviously current tenants
Correct.
wanting to vacate. It's the last thing they want to do when you're coming into Christmas holidays and end of school as well. They don't want to have to deal with that or think about it at all. So really leveraging. Yeah, really leveraging.
That's happened to me. I've actually had a settlement just before Christmas, and I was hearing crickets. No one was wanting to rent it, so I had to wait till the new year, which was a bit of annoying, but that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah, and it most definitely does. But I think that's the biggest thing to try and think about as well, is if that does happen, is you may be better off not listing over Christmas and just letting it sit. And then obviously getting everything done to make sure that you're presenting it as best as possible. And first thing on the new year is just list that and get it right up there, get it out, make sure your property manager's got those open homes scheduled, responding to those inquiries, and really trying to pump everyone through that's interested so that we can hit the market really hard in that best sort of time period to find you a tenant as quickly as possible.
Yeah, excellent. So that's the 7 tips, Lara.
That is.
Okay, I've got a bonus tip. I thought I'd jump in with a bonus tip. One thing I'd like to touch on is landlord insurance.
Yes. Yes.
Yep. How do you get the right landlord insurance? Do you recommend it? What do you suggest?
Okay, so to you guys, I can. To my own clients, I cannot. As a property manager, I legally cannot recommend who to go through. Yeah. I know Billy from Positive Property has been working very hard with owners that we're both working with at the moment for complexes, and she's recommended some great people to go through. So depending on your situation as well, there are different types. So you've got your landlord insurance, I suppose subtypes I would say, is your overall landlord insurance. And then you've also got landlord insurance for strata complexes, which is where you've got your body corporates, because they do differ, because typically your body corporates pay or have the overall building insurance policy as well. So your landlord insurance will be a little bit different. And you've got to make sure that the company you're going through does offer landlord insurance for strata complexes if you do have a strata property.
Okay.
So the ones I have dealt with in the past that have been very, very good to deal with is Terry Shear.
Yep.
EBM, I know, is one of their biggest competitors, and they do offer strata landlord insurance. I have had quite a few people at the moment go through Marsh landlord insurance. And then you've always got your odd ones, or your most common known insurance companies like Allianz, Combank, which is now not through them directly, it's through Hollards. You've got, I'm pretty sure Amy does it. You've got quite a very broad aspect of what they cover. The biggest thing to remember with landlord insurance is really, when you're getting your pricing or your quotes in, is just comparing what they cover and how much your excess
Comparing
is.
apples for apples, not apples for oranges. That's all.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
they vary in different ways.
Yes, they do. And yeah, the biggest thing for landlord insurance is literally that, is just comparing what they're covering you for. And obviously the basic standards, they do cover your loss of rent, and they do cover lock changes and things like that. And obviously then your building insurance covers the rest of the things they need to. But one of the biggest thing that's sort of changed recently with landlord insurance is accidental damage and malicious damage. So a lot of policies don't come with accidental damage, which is where a tenant has accidentally damaged your property. They may have moved their fridge out and they have accidentally damaged the wall. However, they typically come with malicious damage, but the biggest thing we have seen is that trying to prove to your insurance company that a tenant has maliciously damaged the property, it's almost impossible to do unless they physically have maliciously damaged it and we have police reports for an incident that has occurred. So having accidental damage, one of the best things you can do, because you can always fall back on it if you need it. And then obviously your loss of rent as well, for the various aspects that they will cover you for loss of rent.
Okay, the biggest takeaway, make sure you get accidental damage. That way you're covered, because there's a lot of sneaky insurance companies out there that will say malicious, and the reason they do that is because then they can not pay you. I know those insurance companies don't like paying out. They don't like it at all. Yeah.
No, they really don't. But yeah, doing your research about insurance companies is a good thing. Sometimes Google reviews is not the best way to do it. Asking in community chats or investor chats, such as potentially the one that George has running on Facebook as well, to see what people's past experiences are, because you're really going to open up to see if someone is giving them a bad review because maybe they didn't get paid out on something, and that may have been due to their policy not being what it should have been. And then you'll have the owners in there that go, yeah, we used, whoever it was, and they were absolutely amazing. They paid out, they assessed very quickly, all of those sort of things. So actually reaching out to other investors through things like that or platforms like that can guide you in the right direction of pushing you or to think who you want to go with over someone else after you've sort of compared quotes and pricing and what they cover as well.
Okay, excellent. Let's do some Q&A.
Let's do it.
Okay, Dave Huggins said, I have had issues with tenant paying rent. He pays it just before deadline.
Okay, so that is tricky, because technically as a property manager, we cannot request them to pay rent unless they are in arrears. That would be a situation where you would have to explain to them that it may negatively impact their rental history because they are almost consistently behind, or they're just paying one day in front. So to ensure that they can get back up a little bit further is suggesting to them, we cannot tell them, but suggesting to them that they might pay an additional amount next week plus their weekly rent to try and get them a few days in front. That way, if there is a banking delay, they're not going to be in arrears, and it helps them in the future with their rental history, because banks do start looking at tenants' rental history when you're going to buy a property as well. So it does affect them more than what they think.
Lara,
Yeah.
I like that.
Hey, Lara, sorry, just to elaborate on that quickly. So what he's had is he had 2 notices to vacate, and as you know, there's a deadline to that.
Yes.
And what he will do is he'll hang off until that deadline and pay it just before it. And then apparently there's a process where he's got 5 notices to vacate before he can actually move to the next step. So it's actually a very timely process to try and move them on. But he knows he knows the system and he's playing it.
Yep. Well, good luck getting another rental property once he leaves yours.
Yeah. And
right. He's gonna be living in his car. That's what.
Good.
I feel like you call him and say, "Look, buddy, you realize you're going to be living in your car." I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but
yeah. So obviously, in that situation, he knows what he's doing, which is a real shame. But just essentially playing the game with him and following that process to what needs to be done. If his lease is coming up shortly, do not renew it. I would suggest just kick him out as soon as you possibly can and find another tenant who isn't going to do that. Because at the end of the day, not only does it affect you and potentially the mortgage you need to pay and bills you need to pay, it's going to affect him long term as well, because an agency is not going to want to rent to him again, knowing that he's just playing the system and he's just being in arrears all the time.
yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
That's okay.
Adam Bella said, a brand new property, could this be a good enough excuse about pets? What are the limit of pets?
Okay. Is this a specific Queensland question?
Yep.
Do we know?
Yep.
It
I
is?
think so. Adam,
Okay.
is it Queensland? Nod,
Well, it's
yes.
really just generally a brand new property anywhere. Like,
Yep,
you know, can you
okay.
say to them, because it's a brand new property, I don't really want to have pets in there. Can you say that?
No. In Queensland,
Wow.
most definitely not. It does
Yes.
depend state to state. So I know obviously in Victoria, you can get pet bonds. However, Queensland, you are not legally allowed to do that. So that's where it really comes into play of which state you're in as to which legislation is applicable, and what that legislation really states. But as a general rule, no. However, if you are provided multiple applications, you can pick one that doesn't. But you may also run the risk, as George was saying before, that a week or 6 months down the track or 12 months down the track, the tenant goes, oh, I want to get a pet now. And they request to have a pet. So the good thing, though, is obviously in Victoria, they have pet bonds, which is the extra on top of your 4 weeks worth of rent as a bond to cover any pet damage caused at the property. In Queensland, we don't have a pet bond, but our general tenancy agreements, the specific legislation in there for a tenant is if they have a pet, they are required to complete a pest control and vacate. They're required to do professional carpet cleaning. And any damage caused, they are held legally liable for. So if they don't pay the invoice, we take it from their bond. If it is above their bond, we take them to QCAT and go to court for it. And they are typically paid out by the adjudicator, usually at all times, because it's very evident that the dog has, chewed the aircon line or completely destroyed the backyard, because no one else is going to go and chew an aircon line, if that makes sense. Like, it's very evident that it was the pet. So there's always ways that we can rectify any damages that are to occur and make sure things are done properly. And obviously, if they're not providing that, carpet cleaning or pest control and vacate, we ask them for it. If they don't supply it and take it from their bond, they have to pay for it, because that is part of the agreement that they agreed to while having a pet at a rental property.
Yes, that's great,
Yep.
Lara. Thank you.
That's
Thanks,
okay.
Adam. Okay, so why do agents let tenants get away with ruining the house and the garden?
Oh, someone has obviously not had a great experience here, but that's a hard one to answer. But I don't know, because I wouldn't let a tenant get away with doing so, because obviously we conduct our routine inspections, and part of the landlord insurance as well, touching back on that, is generally it's typical a minimum of 2 per year. So every 6 months is required. Otherwise, your insurance won't pay out on. So typically they're done every 12 to 16 weeks in Queensland, and pretty much I think it's all states across Queensland as well, across Australia as well. And if a tenant is not keeping a property up to standard, they can get breached.
Excellent.
So,
Thanks for sharing. Now, look, what we're going to do now is we're going to cut off our live stream. Everyone on our live, thank you for joining us. We've got a few other questions. We're going to dive a little bit deeper with our members.